Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Welcome back to Paris History Avec Hemingway. And today we're talking about someone that you probably have heard of before, Josephine Baker. I know I've definitely heard that name. She's famous for dancing with a bunch of bananas as a skirt. That's what I know her for. And she was actually American born, but spent a lot of time in France. So Claudine, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, Josephine Baker, or Frida Josephine McDonald, as she was born in America. She was born in St. Louis. Yes, yet another lady we have that was coming from St. Louis.
Oh, yeah.
She was born in 1906. Her mother, Carrie, had been adopted by a Little Rock, Arkansas family in 1888 that were former slaves, and they adopted her mother. But, of course, like a lot of the ladies also, Josephine doesn't know who her father was. So years later, she never knew. She never met him. Years later, one of her sons, after Josephine passed away, did a bunch of research on it and found a sort of birth certificate that says that the father was, all it's listed as EDW. That not like initials, like short Edward, just EDW. So she had, she had been working. Carrie, her mother, had been working for a white German family living in St. Louis, and they think that there was a time at that point that she must have had an affair with one of them, because when she was pregnant, about 6 weeks before she was pregnant, she started having some complications, and she was taken to a hospital where, most of the time, a Black African woman was not going to be allowed to be in a hospital. So that's why they also think that it was probably this rich German man, because she was actually taken care of.
Yeah.
That she also had even some semblance of a birth certificate, because a lot of the times back then, even Black children wouldn't even have birth certificates.
That's really interesting. So kind of the fact that her father was this rich white German dude is the reason she's alive.
Yeah, definitely. So her mother wasn't exactly a great mother. They basically lived in St. Louis and in kind of a bad area in the city. And at a very early age, Josephine ended up having to, she basically was living on the streets, sometimes by herself. She basically developed quite a few street smarts at that age, and would just kind of dance, sometimes just dance on the corner to make some spare change. And she was 7 years old.
Whoa, she was a street performer from the age of 7?
So sad. I mean, when you think of a child back then, that's just so sad.
It's super sad.
At 8 years old, she started working as a live-in maid. So
what?
Yeah, she basically was living with some family as their maid at 8 years old.
This is so disgusting.
It's just horrible. And now it's just like I remember when I was a kid and my uncle would always say kids these days and we'd get mad at him. Now I'm like, oh, kids these days. You don't even
I was saying, we get it. We get it.
like you could be 8 years old living in someone's house as a maid.
Yeah, seriously. At 8 years old, I didn't even think I knew how to pick up a broom.
No. So but she was living there with this family, and one day the owner, the woman of the house, the lady, she ended up burning her hands one day because she said she used too much laundry soap. She basically like took her hands and like pushed them down on like a hot skittle or something.
What?
And basically burnt her hands.
Oh, this is horrific. This is slavery.
Horrible. So at 12 years old, she drops out of school. And she had gone to school for a few years. She drops out of school. She's 13 years old. She's living on the street. That doesn't really have anything to do with her mother. She's living on the street. She's performing on the street corners. She ends up getting a job as a waitress at the Old Chauffeurs Club in St. Louis. And when she was there, she met a man named Willie Wells. At 14 years old, they got married.
What?
Yeah.
How old was Willie?
Well, definitely much older. I mean, that's, those kind of stories when we're talking about the 18th century France, it's kind of normal. But
I was going to say.
This is 1900s. This
Interesting. So he's basically a pedophile.
So they ended up getting married. They were divorced months later. So it didn't last very long, thankfully. But the next year she met another Willie, Willie Baker. And they ended up getting married in 1921 and they divorced 4 years later in 1925. But she obviously kept his last name.
Yeah.
So she ended up, she and her mom didn't have, obviously a great relationship. And her mom didn't like the fact that she was doing, dancing and doing vaudeville and doing all these things to make money. And so she basically one day, just said, forget it. And she, through somebody else, she found out about going to New York City. And it was during the Harlem Renaissance. And she ended up going to the Plantation Club. And at 15 years old, she's performing on stage.
That's wild. I mean, her life had been building up to that from dancing in the street.
Yeah, she's only, at this point, she's only 15 years old.
That's so wild.
A huge chorus line of, girls on the stage. She was always one of the ones on the end. And she kind of did this act where she pretended she didn't know what she was doing. So, here's everybody, I picture it as like, the can at the Moulin Rouge. And then you to the corner that, is off time and all this stuff. But it was kind of her little act. And so it was kind of this little comedy thing that she would do. And then she'd end up coming out later just by herself. And she would just like, blow everybody away with her dancing. Like she was just amazing. So they ended up thinking, she was basically a star at that point. She was, 15, 16 years old. She was the highest paid chorus line in vaudeville.
That's amazing considering what she came from and all the hardship. I mean, that's so wild.
Yeah. Again, she's a teenager.
Yeah, she's a child.
Yeah, she's a child. So she ends up, while she's working there, she hears about this troupe that was going to Paris. And so in 1925, she was 19 years old. She decides that she's going to go with them. So she lands in the City of Light. She's performing at the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées. And she said later on in 1974, this is her exact quote, that she couldn't stand America. And I was one of the first colored Americans in Paris. So she didn't, it was definitely, back then, I mean, the racism then was just as bad.
Yeah.
If not worse. And she basically wanted out of America because she knew she wasn't going to get very far.
Yeah, and France has always been known to be less racist in that way. I mean, I had read, I think it was Jefferson saw that black people were being treated the same in France as white people, and he was kind of like, oh, wait a minute, maybe we're doing weird stuff in America.
Yeah, things aren't so great back there.
Yeah.
So her instant, she had this erotic style of dancing and she was basically practically naked. You brought up the bananas. She basically made a skirt of plastic bananas. And that was all that she had on. So she, there's so many different pictures and I think I've even seen maybe some videos or maybe I'm just thinking of a movie dancing, and these bananas are flying all over the place.
Yeah, that's what she's famous for. You see these crazy photos of her in these banana skirts.
Yeah, so in the Folies Bergère, they started having her there, and that's where she did this. Started with the fake banana, and she basically, there was like the dance sauvage was basically her, dance, because
True.
she was this beautiful, exquisite looking woman. And she had just basically, she had this sense of humor when she was on stage a little bit too, and so like people were definitely drawn to her. She was instantly, quite a sensation. She would also wear a pink flamingo feather, like one pink flamingo feather between her legs, so the feather would be moving all over the place.
She was so fun. Oh my God.
And she also at one point bought a cheetah. And she named the cheetah Chiquita, which is, and she would basically have this cheetah in her house, and it had this like beautiful diamond encrusted collar.
I love that she bought a cheetah. She went all Tiger King on herself.
She did. She is way ahead of her time.
She was the first Tiger King.
But 1920s in Paris, and of course that's when the Hemingway and the Lost Generation were there, and one night she would go, a lot of times at night she'd go to the Le Jacques bar, and Hemingway was there one night and saw her dancing. And she was wearing this long black fur coat, and she was on the floor dancing, and they kind of kept looking at each other, Josephine and Hemingway.
Oh.
And so he went over there and basically, busted in and told the guy to go away, and he was going to dance with her. They ended up like dancing the whole night together, and, drinking and all this stuff. And he afterwards, she said to him, she had nothing on underneath the coat, not underwear. And so he'd been dancing with her this whole time, had no idea about it. And he later said that she was the most sensational woman that anybody had ever seen.
I mean, I'd have to agree. She was sounds like super sexy and just very confident.
Yeah. She didn't really, I don't think she cared at all what anybody thought.
No.
But so she started, she's on the stage, and she started doing songs too. She started recording songs. She performed in opera, where she worked for quite a long time just to get her voice to be able to perform in an opera. She took these things like really seriously. She did a lot of silent films at the time too. And so she, at this time, it's in the 1920s, 1930. In 1936, she performed back in New York and the Ziegfeld Follies on Broadway, and not many people came. Like very few people came, and she thought this was going to be, she had this huge fame and success in Paris, and so now she go back to her homeland, and nobody really seemed to care.
Mm.
So she only did a few performances, and then she was replaced by Gypsy Rose Lee, who, if you don't know her, there's an amazing movie, Gypsy, with I can't remember, Natalie Wood in it. But she was replaced by her. And so she returned to France. She decided to turn in her American citizenship because she was just so dismayed after that trip. She turned in her American citizenship, and she married Jean Leon in 1937 and became a French citizen.
I love that she's just like, screw you, America. I'm moving to France.
Yeah, I'm out of here. But during World War II, she ended up leaving Paris, and she went down to the Dordogne, and she rented a house, the Chateau de Milan, and she ended up actually helping the resistance and the resistance spies against the Germans, because her job was a perfect cover, because she could go into these clubs, nobody's suspecting her. There's German officers, there's all these people that are in these clubs watching her, because they're the only ones really allowed to go, and she basically would overhear all these things and write all these notes. She'd then pin them into her underwear. So in case she was searched, she was able to get out. But she did this whole thing during the war where she, because nobody would ever assume that that's what she was doing.
She had the perfect cover, but I'm trying to imagine how these notes fit under her pink flamingo feather.
That's true. I mean, maybe I think it was after she left. Maybe she wasn't leaving in the flamingo.
Okay. Got it.
She was like, maybe she was putting them inside the bananas.
All right. Yes, definitely inside the bananas makes more sense to me.
Yeah. But so then during the war, she also would tour around, and she'd go to visit the French and English and American military bases. Like, the OS, whatever it was, Bob Hope always did that. And
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But that they were doing that then, to American troops, but France wasn't doing that. And she just kind of did it and organized it all on her own. and decided she'd go all over, Europe, and then also to, lower into Asia and stuff. And she'd go to these military bases to entertain everybody,
So
entertain
she
men.
started it in France. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
And so, and after the war, she was given quite a few awards, the Croix de la Guerre and the Legion of Honor and all of this stuff. So she, they really remembered her and, appreciated everything she had done.
I mean, and I feel like that would have never happened in America with the racism. Like, even if she was a war hero,
No.
you wouldn't have heard about it. I mean, France really embraced her.
They really did. I mean, instantly too. So, in 1949, she decided she would go back again to America, and she was performing in Miami, and she insisted for anywhere she was going to go, she insisted that the audience had to be integrated. It could not be just a white audience. Like the clubs had to allow Black and white people in.
Wow.
And some of the clubs weren't, they just wouldn't work with her. They said no. And so she was like, okay, well then I'm not going to go. So she ended up going to the Stork Club in New York City, and she was really upset with them because they, a lot of the clubs would work with her and say, okay. But the Stork Club in New York City said, no way, we're not going to do this. And she basically in rehearsals, right before they opened the doors, and there was a few people in there, including Grace Kelly, Princess Grace, and all of her, fancy friends with her. And Josephine kind of got into it with the owner and said, no, I'm not going to perform. And the owner was like, you get up on the stage, or you can't ever come to, the U.S. again. And so Grace Kelly basically went up, took her by the arm, and was just like, we're leaving. And
wow.
All of her people with her. And they were friends for the rest of their life.
Ah, that's so cool.
She was given a NAACP Woman of the Year award. There was a parade at the time in New York for her for 100,000 people came to. So she definitely had she was definitely outspoken in a lot of ways too.
Yeah. I mean, I love that Grace Kelly bestied her.
Yeah, I know. Could you imagine? The club owner was so mad that he ended up being able to get her visa revoked, and she couldn't come back to the U.S. for almost 10 years.
What?
Yeah, she wasn't allowed back into the U.S. So she was back in France, but in 1963 she ended up coming back, and she actually stood with Martin Luther King Jr. She did the March on Washington and stood there with him at the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and she spoke out a lot about it. She had a huge issue, she was very outspoken about the racism in America and how horrible it was. And after he died, his wife called up Josephine and said, could you come back and be basically the leader of the civil rights? Like, can you be the face and take over what he has done? And Josephine was just like, no, I can't. Because she hated she just didn't like being in America and seeing all of this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, wow.
So when she came back she's back in Paris, she picks up a fourth husband.
Oh, yes.
Joe Bouillon. She was married from 1947 to 1962. And during that marriage, she ended up starting to adopt children. And she ended up calling these children her Rainbow Tribe.
I love that name.
No, it's so cute. She got 12 kids from 12 different countries. I think 10 different countries. 2 of them were French. But she basically would get them, get these children from basically all over the world. Some of them were, older. They weren't babies. She just, wanted to put this amazing little tribe of people together. She would raise them each differently with their, whatever their religion was from their country. It was just this really beautiful thing. She ended up she bought this when she went down to the Jordan. She ended up getting this chateau, and basically they all just lived there in the chateau.
This sounds so beautiful. Is this what inspired Angelina Jolie to adopt like 10,000 kids?
Probably.
Wow. Oh, that's so sweet. How did she have the energy? She was doing things so different for 12 different kids. Yeah,
I think she definitely had some help, but she always was having financial issues. Like, she was always basically on the verge of bankruptcy. She'd get money and then she'd lose a lot of money. In the final years, she wasn't able to pay for her home. And so they were just basically trying to evict her. And Bridget Bardot even got involved in it, trying to say, like to step
What?
in and honor her behalf. And, she heard when Josephine was on, she was on a small tour. She heard about the fact that they were basically like locking the door. They were locking her out. Like she wasn't going to be able to come back. She heard about it. She ended up getting back. She got into the house somehow. She locked herself and chained herself basically into the kitchen.
What?
And they only got her because she ended up like leaving the kitchen at one point to go into another room to get something. And then they locked all the doors behind her and kicked her out. But her good old friend, Grace Kelly, ended up saying, come to Monaco. I've got a place.
I love it. Grace Kelly to the rescue. I want Grace Kelly to be my bestie.
I know. Wouldn't that be nice? But, it's just like she constantly, I think because she'd also, she'd spend, when she had money, she'd just spend all of it. And then all of a sudden she'd be like, oh, wait, now I need more money. I think that her height of her popularity was definitely when she first got there. And as she was getting older, that wasn't, that's when, all of those different clubs and stuff in Paris, they were all over the place. So she had a harder time making money there towards the end.
Yeah, but it's crazy that she kept losing all her money, but also she had 12 kids.
Yeah, 12, having 12 kids and 4 husbands and all of that probably definitely didn't help. But in 1968, she ended up performing at the Olympia, where also, Edith and all of our other lovely women have performed. And
yes.
1975, on April 8th, 1975, she was going to celebrate her 50 years. And they put together this really big show, a big review, and everybody was there. Prince Rainier, Grace Kelly, Jackie Onassis was there.
Wow.
All of these like really huge. You can't get much bigger than that. All these huge people came to see her. And, here's her 50th anniversary and she, all these people are there and it's this amazing, amazing show. Well, 2 days, she performs the 8th and the 9th. And then on the 10th, she goes home and she's laying in bed surrounded by all of the newspapers and all of the reviews of how wonderful and amazing she is. She ends up having a cerebral hemorrhage and goes into a coma.
What?
Yeah. It's very
what?
Yeah.
Wait, so do you think she was like overwhelmed by all the love?
Maybe, or just kind of a cerebral hemorrhage is basically, isn't it like something basically kind of like your brain is bleeding?
Yeah.
We really, on our 2 things we're doing today, we really should have some medical.
Yeah, we need a medical expert on the show. Yeah. We are not medical experts by any way. Yeah.
But she had a hemorrhage, and they ended up taking her to the hospital, the Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital. That's the same hospital that Princess Diana died at.
Oh, this is so sad. Wait, so she was like 50 years old?
She was only, yeah. Well, no, she was 59 years old, 60 years old.
59, yeah. Okay.
She died on April 12th, she died on April 12th, 1975.
So they just found her with all these beautiful writings around her, and yeah.
Yeah, so very sad. It was just basically here's, probably, it was going to be weeks and weeks of this celebration of her on stage. And 2 days into it, she ends up dying. Well,
you just never know. But she left behind 12 kids who probably like adored her and lived on through her.
Yeah. They did a whole full Roman Catholic mass at the La Madeleine. And it's the only time up until then that an American woman was given basically a full French military honors of a funeral.
No way.
And she was then taken down and buried in Monaco next to Grace.
Of course, her bestie.
Yeah.
Wow, the French really loved her.
Yeah, she was. I think that they basically took her in as one of their own, very, right off the bat.
I think they loved her sexiness and her confidence and her wild lifestyle.
Yeah, her home eventually went through quite a few hands, but then eventually it was later reopened, and it's a museum now dedicated to her.
Oh, so you can go visit.
Yeah, you could go visit. It was just open. It's just open in 2011, so it's not even that hasn't even been around very long. But her children, like her, one of her sons later was the one we mentioned at the beginning, how he had done all this research to find out who her father was. that secret basically died when her mother died. So nobody really knows.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be too hard to find out. But I mean, what a beautiful, fun life considering where she came from, literally living on the street. Like, that's so wow.
Yeah. I love that she was also just such an outspoken activist, coming
Yeah.
back to America and, standing next to MLK and, saying, trying to bring some justice. It's pretty sad that what she said back then in 1970s is you could still say about America today.
Yeah, that is pretty sad. But I love that, like you said, she just stood up for what she believed in always, and she even left the country for it.
Yeah, and she, left this beautiful legacy of all these children behind her that were probably taught a lot about acceptance and love and, being, raised around each other and instantly understanding somebody else's culture and their religion because, it's your brother or your sister.
I would love to know what happened to those kids. I'm going to go dive into that later.
Yeah, go find some of them.
Yeah, I want to know what happened to those 12 little babies. Well,
the Rainbow
wow.
Tribe. I just love that they're called the Rainbow Tribe. It's so cute.
I just want to have like one or something and call it a Rainbow Tribe. 2 max, that's my tribe,
That's a good sized tribe.
Yeah, I think it could be a one-man wolf pack. Rainbow Tribe.
Yeah, Josephine, there's a lot because of her time that she was in Paris. You could find a lot about her. There's a lot of images and at the Orsay when they had that fantastic exhibit last spring about the Black models where they did all this work on looking into, like a Jericho and Manet's Olympia, where it was just Olympia and her servant was what it was always kind of known as. And they found out, what her name was, and it was named Lori. Part of that exhibition also had a whole thing about Josephine Baker because she really, revolutionized a lot of stuff at that time.
Yeah, I mean, she was so ahead of her time, and that was so brave of her just to go to Paris. And I mean, she just sounds like a fearless woman.
Yeah. And to have a cheetah. I want a cheetah.
Yeah, and a cheetah. I mean, original Tiger King, what's up?
Yeah, I want a cheetah with a diamond collar. I'll just hang out with it, walk around the streets.
Oh my God. I've never been much of a cat girl. I'm allergic. So
well, that's a cheetah's different. I also wanted a orca whale after I saw Free Willy a long time. In the bathtub.
I mean, we obviously love animals.
Yeah, I was a kid, so don't think I'm crazy.
I mean, I love that you're crazy. Well, thank you so much for teaching us again about another fabulous woman in French history. And tune in next week, guys, to hear more information.
See you then. Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's Bleu, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at ClaudineHemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.